here. And then, so we're live here too. I was to make sure we're live everywhere. Yeah, so guys, sorry. I know I normally do our study group like an hour later, but that's because I take a break. So I do the first live and then I take an hour to go for my walk, and then I come back and then we do the live study group. But it is like 90 something degrees outside. I'm not fixing to walk in that heat. And so we're going to do a time change. So today we're about to do the study group now. Sorry for those of you who planned for the next hour, but this is, wasn't going to do it. And going forward, I just told Reagan, who's my media, she's my social media person, told her that we're starting next week, all the study groups are going to be like moved up in the time frame as well to compensate for that. So that way I can go for my walk when it's not like freaking hot as hell outside, and then that way I can also do the study group. So the study group starting next week is going to be moved up by an hour, and then so y'all know how it's going to go, right? So anyways, but I'm here, might as well do the study group now, right? So I'm here, this is our study group time. We're doing Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. Thanks so much for like flexing with the time change, really appreciate it. For those of y'all who are tuning in, so some of y'all may tune in, not know what's going on. This is not the like readings were the last hour, so this is our study group, which means every Wednesday and Friday after the lives we read from a spiritual text, we discuss it, and we talk about it. That's what we do. So that's what this is. So if you're not wanting to do that, then you have to come back next week for the time that is scheduled for the lives or readings. If you're asking for a personal reading, or you want a personal reading, or you want me to connect with the little one in spirit, that's not in this hour, that is in the last hour, and then you'll have to come back next week, okay? All right, guys. For those of you who haven't been following along with the book, so this is Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, and for those of you who have not read the book, it's a great book. It's a spiritual text, and it's based on a conversation that Neil is having with God. So what happens is he went through a lot of struggles and crap. He went through a lot of crap in his life, and he got to the point where he didn't. He just got tired of it because he had gone through so much and nothing seemed to be working even after he was doing what he was supposed to do. So he got tired one day or one night, in the middle of the night, and he decided, that's it, I'm going to like get it all out. So he went off and got it all out on paper, and it turned into this dialogue between himself and his higher voice, or his inner voice, which we call God, in this conversation. So it's Neil and God having a dialogue and a conversation. So he is speaking to God, God is speaking in return, and they're discussing different things. So what we do is we go through the content, we stop, I may give my commentary on some things, but everything that we do in this hour has to do with the content. So if you have any questions about the book, if you have any questions about the material that we discuss, spiritual based questions, topical questions, feel free to put those in the comment section below. Before I get off, I always check to see what the questions are, and I try to come back and comment and give my perspective on things and what I understand about different things, okay? Okay, so Rhonda Kincaid, sweetheart, you're being extremely rude, and I'm not going to help you because you're being disrespectful and it's unappreciated. So you can come in here and be nasty. I already said it before, but you didn't get the message or the memo. Anyone who comes into my lives who is disrespectful or who tries to come for me, you will not receive help from me. And so you can use whatever words you want to use to try to attack me with it. It's not going to get you anything. I'm not going to help you. So, okay? All right, guys. So anyways, let's go over to the material. So Conversations with God. So we are in chapter 14. This is page 176, and I've got the 3-book set. So there's 3 books in one. And so we're still on the first book. So we're still going through the first book. And then after we're done with the first book, we'll take a break and then we'll read something else. But we're on chapter 14 of the first book, and we're on page 176 of Conversations with God. So every time I speak as God, I will say God, and then I'll say the part. Every time I say Neil, I will say Neil, and then I'll read his part. And so I'll be bouncing back and forth between the two different individuals, okay? All right, so God. There now, I have explained it all for you. Life, how it works, its very reason and purpose. How else can I serve you? Neil, there's nothing more I could ask I am filled with thanks for this incredible dialogue. It's been so far-reaching, so encompassing, and as I look at my original questions, I see we've covered the first 5. Having to do with life and relationships, money and careers, and health, I had more questions on that original list. As you know, but somehow these discussions make those questions seem irrelevant. God. Yes, still you've asked them. Let's just quickly answer the remainder of them, one by one, now that we're moving this rapidly through the material. Neil, what material? God, the material I brought you here to expose you to. Now that we're moving this rapidly through the material, let's just take those remaining questions and deal with them quickly. Neil, what is the karmic lesson I'm supposed to be learning here? What am I trying to master? God, you are learning nothing here. You have nothing to learn. You have only to remember. That is, remember me. What are you trying to master? You are trying to master mastering itself. Neil, is there such a thing as reincarnation? How many past lives have I had? What was I in them? Is karmic debt a reality? God, it is difficult to believe there is still a question about this. I find it hard to imagine. There have been so many reports from thoroughly reliable sources of past life experiences. Some of these people have brought back strikingly detailed descriptions of events and such completely verifiable data as to eliminate any possibility that they were making it up or had contrived to somehow deceive researchers and loved ones. You have had 647 past lives. Since you insist on being exact, this is your 648th. You were everything in them: a king, a queen, a serf, a teacher, a student, a master, a male, a female, a warrior, a pacifist, a hero, a coward, a killer, a savior, a sage, a fool. You have been all of it. No, there is no such thing as karmic debt. Not in the sense that you mean in this question. A debt is something that must or should be repaid. You are not obligated to do anything. Still, there are certain things that you want to do, choose to experience, and some of these choices hinge on the desire for them as has been created by what you have experienced before. That is, as close as words can come to this thing you call karma. If karma is the innate desire to be better, to be bigger, to evolve and to grow, and to look at past events and experiences as a measure of that, then yes, karma does exist. But it does not require anything. Nothing is ever required. You are, as always you have ever been, a being of free choice. So I'll stop there for a second because I want to comment on the idea of karmic debt, because a lot of people have this concept or this belief that what we experience in a lifetime or what we experience in a prior lifetime, that we create these debts. And debts is really not the best word to use, because when I've spoken to Aja, what I've been told is that when we have an experience in a lifetime, that doesn't mean that we owe anything to anyone, but our soul, our higher being, is desiring of a full experience. So if you are, let's say, living from one perspective and you're operating and you're behaving from one perspective, but you don't understand the opposite of that or what the other side of it is, then you may choose to understand the other side of it. You may have a lifetime that will give you that experience, that will give you that expression. And that's what tends to happen. What tends to happen is people will inevitably, or souls will inevitably have one set of experiences, and then they want to know the opposite. They want to know the different perspective or the other perspective. And so you can call that a karmic debt. It's not technically a debt because you're choosing to have a full experience that is karmically tied to the different experiences in the lifetime. So that's more of the idea of what that would be. Also with people, whenever we are having experiences in a lifetime with certain spirits or certain souls, what tends to happen is it's like something that you've been already working on with this soul. So you want to carry on that experience. You want to carry on what that has produced for you. So for example, if someone has been working on like a deal with a specific business, instead of trying to just stop working on it and then go and try to work on a deal with a new business, they usually keep trying because they want to get out of it what they want to get out of it. And so each soul, whenever they're coordinating with each other to have lifetime experiences with each other, it's because they already know some of the underlying root causes or some of the underlying reasons for why things will be with that person the way they are. So it's more of a, hey, we already went through this together. Let's keep going through this. Let's keep trying to have these experiences together. So it's more of an agreement with the soul. It's not because you owe the soul something or they owe you. It's more of a, this is what I experienced with you. You experienced this with me. So if we have another experience in another lifetime, we are basing some of those new experiences on some of these older experiences in this way. So coming back to this, number 8, Neil, I sometimes feel very psychic. Is there such a thing as being psychic? Am I that? Are people who claim to be psychic trafficking with the devil? Which is a common misconception with people. People think that, especially if you grew up in a very religious background. I grew up Catholic, so by default, whenever I am around a lot of people who are Catholic, where, like, here's an example. I had a cousin and she went to go visit my step grandmother, who I've not been in touch with for a while, but she went to go visit her and she just, say, how's Fernando? How's he doing? And she said, oh, he's doing really good. He's doing really good. His work, she thought I was still working at Starbucks, and my cousin was like, no, he's not working at Starbucks anymore. He is a professional psychic and a medium. She didn't know what that was, so my cousin had to explain to her, he talks to the dead, is what she said. And my step-grandmother was like, ooh, like she got like really anxious and nervous and spooky. She spooked out by it, so, which was pretty common. Like when you are talking to people and they don't have any understanding of this, they don't know what this is about, how this works, etc., then they and they grew up in a very Catholic or a very religious background, they tend to react the same way. So they automatically assume, they always assume that, oh, well, there's only like 4 or 5 psychics that are supposed to exist based on like biblical texts, but anybody else is not supposed to be. Like, okay. So, but those psychics were supposed to be, right? Because they, everyone knew that they were psychic, but people who are still psychic, which everybody is psychic. This is what I say to people. Every single person can do what I do. Every single person can connect with our loved ones in spirit. Every single person can sense the future or tune into stuff. It just takes an understanding of it and then practice so that you can best build up your skill set and your skill level. No psychic is perfect. No psychic can see 100% accuracy of anything. That is not something that is possible. But you can see a lot. You can tune into a lot. You can get a lot of detail if you practice, and everybody can do what I do. That's why I tell people. Anyways, back to the question. So, Neil, I sometimes feel very psychic. Is there such a thing as being psychic? Am I that? Are people who claim to be psychic trafficking with the devil? God, yes, there is such a thing as being psychic. You are that. Everyone is that. There is not a person who does not have what you call psychic ability. This is exactly what I said, y'all. There are only people who do not use it. Using psychic ability is nothing more than using your sixth sense. Obviously, this is not trafficking with the devil, or I would not have given you this sense to you. And of course, there is no devil with whom to traffic, which there isn't. Someday, perhaps in book 2, I'll explain to you exactly how psychic energy and psychic ability works. Neil, there is going to be a book 2? God, yes, but let's finish this one first. Neil, is it okay to take money for doing good? If I choose to do healing work in the world, God's work, can I do that and become financially abundant too, or are the two mutually exclusive? God, I've already covered this. Neil, is sex okay? So, which the answer is no, it is not. It is okay. The answer is yes, it is okay. So that was the answer. That's what he was told back in like pages past. Number 10, is sex okay? Come on. What is the real story behind this human experience? Is sex purely for procreation, as some religions say? Is true holiness and enlightenment achieved through denial or transmutation of the sexual energy? Is it okay to have sex without love? Is just the physical sensation of it okay enough as a reason? God, of course sex is okay. Again, if I didn't want you to play certain games, I wouldn't have given you the toys. Do you give your children things you don't want them to play with? Play with sex, play with it. It's wonderfully fun. why it's just about the most fun you can have with your body. If you're talking of strictly physical experiences alone, but for goodness sake, don't destroy sexual innocence and pleasure and the purity of fun, the joy, by misusing sex. Don't use it for power or hidden purpose, for ego gratification or domination, for any purpose other than the purest joy and the highest ecstasy, given and shared, which is love, and love recreated, which is new life. Have I not chosen a delicious way to make more of you? With regard to denial, I have dealt with that before. Nothing holy has ever been achieved through denial. Yet desires change as even larger realities are glimpsed. It is not unusual, therefore, for people to simply desire less or even activity, or for that matter, any of a number of activities of the body. For some, the activities of the soul become foremost and by far the most pleasurable. Each of his own without judgment. That is the motto. The end of your question is answered this way. You don't need to have a reason for anything, just because. Be the cause of your experience. Remember, experience produces concept of self. Conception produces creation. Creation produces experience. You want to experience yourself as a person who has sex without love. Go ahead. You'll do that until you don't want to anymore. And the only thing that could ever cause you to stop this or any behavior is your newly emerging thought about who you are. It's as simple and as complex as that. Neil, why did you make sex so good, so spectacular, so powerful, a human experience if all we are to do is stay away from it as much as we can? What gives? For that matter, why are all fun things either immoral, illegal, or fattening? God, I've answered the end of this question too. With what I've just said, all fun things are not immoral, illegal, or fattening. Your life is, however, an interesting exercise in defining what fun is. To some, fun means sensations of the body. To others, fun may be something entirely different. It all depends on who you think you are and what you are doing here. There is much more to be said about sex that is being said here, but nothing more essential than this. Sex is joy, and many of you have made sex everything else but. Sex is sacred, too, yes, but joy and sacredness do mix. They are in fact the same thing, and many of you think they do not. Your attitudes about sex form a microcosm of your attitudes about life. Life should be a joy, a celebration, and it has become an experience of fear, anxiety, not enoughness, envy, rage, and tragedy. The same can be said about sex. You have repressed sex, even as you have repressed life. Rather than fully self-expressing with abandon and joy, you have shamed sex, even as you have shamed life, calling it evil and wicked, rather than the highest gift and the greatest pleasure. Before you protest that you have not shamed life, look at your collective attitudes about it. 4/5 of the world's people consider life a trial, a tribulation, a time of testing, a karmic debt that must be paid, a school with harsh lessons that must be learned, and in general, an experience to be endured while awaiting the real joy, which is after sex. Which is after death. Sorry, my mind is in the gutter because they've been talking about sex for so long. I'm like, okay, y'all are talking about sex a whole lot. But this is what the chapter is about, right? This is what they're talking about. They're basically trying to make it clear that some of the things that we hold attitudes about that aren't really helpful or don't really do us any good, that we shouldn't hold those attitudes about those things. We should honestly just get over it and just be human, which is what it is about. It's about being human. So to go back to that. Which is after death. It is a shame that so many of you think this way. Small wonder you have applied shame to the very act which creates life. The energy which underscores sex is the energy which underscores life, which is life. The feeling of attraction and the intense and often urgent desire to move toward each other, to become one, is the essential dynamic of all that lives. I have built it into everything. It is inbred, inherent, inside all of that is. The moral codes, religious constrictions, social taboos, and emotional conventions you have placed around sex, and by the way, around love and all of life, have made it virtually impossible for you to celebrate your being. From the beginning of time, all man has ever wanted is to love and be loved. And from the beginning of time, man has done everything in his power to make it impossible to do that. Sex is an extraordinary expression of love, love of another, love of self, love of life. You ought to therefore love it. And you do, you just can't tell anyone you do. You don't dare show how much you love it, or you'll be called a pervert. Yet this is the idea that is perverted. In our next book, we shall look at sex much more closely, explore its dynamics in greater detail, for this is an experience and an issue of sweeping implications on a global scale. For now, and for you personally, simply know this: I have given you nothing shameful, least of all your very body, and its functions. There is no need to hide your body or its functions, nor your love of them and of each other. Your television programs think nothing of showing naked violence, but shrink from the showing naked love. Your whole society reflects that priority. Neil, is there life on other planets? Have we been visited by it? Are we being observed now? Will we see evidence, irrevocable and indisputable, of extraterrestrial life in our lifetime? Does each form of life have its own God? Are you the God of it all? It's a lot of questions in one. Neil, God. Yes to the first part, yes to the second, yes to the third. I cannot answer the fourth part, since that would require me to predict the future, something I am not going to do. We will, however, talk a great deal more about this thing called the future in Book 2, and we'll talk about extraterrestrial life and the natures of God in Book 3. Neil, oh my gosh, there's going to be a Book 3? God, let me outline the plan here. Book 1 is to contain basic truths, primary understandings, and address essential personal matters and issues. Book 2 is to contain more far-reaching truths, grander understandings, and address global matters and issues. Book 3 is to contain the largest truths you are now capable of understanding, and address universal matters and issues, matters being dealt with by all the beings of the universe. God. Or Neil, I see. This is an order? God, no. If you can ask that question, you have understood nothing in this book. You have chosen to do this work, and you have been chosen. The circle is complete. Do you understand? Neil, yes. Okay, so I'm going to stop there because I think that's a good amount. That's a good amount that I kind of want to talk about, or that I kind of want to address. So we'll stop there. Plus, going to be walking in about 30 minutes, so I want to make sure I'm stopping at a good spot. So guys, what do you think about that? What do you think about that whole conversation and what he's bringing up and what he's discussing there? I'm curious what your thoughts are. Yeah, the idea of sex. This is one of the things that I tell people, because we make such a big deal about it. It's really not a big deal. It's a physical, biological function that people get pleasure from. You should never use sex as a way to control people or to dominate people or to abuse people. When you do that, at that point, it no longer is this thing that is meant to be. It is something different that people fundamentally use to their advantage or manipulate others with. So that's where you can get into really sticky territory, and when you can get into trouble, because that's why we run into these situations where people take advantage of others, or they misuse sex, and something that I really do believe is that if we did not have a culture that was so focused on not discussing or not, look at the classical period. Look at all of the art that was done with nude men and nude women. This was just a appreciation for the human form, and it was part of the culture. And now when people go to places like that, they don't freak out, or oh my God, he's naked. No, because they accept that that's part of the cultural history that has been left behind by a lot of these ancient artistic masters. So when we think of sex now, people are much more readily available to embrace and to utilize violence than sex. I would prefer to see more sexual visuals on TV than violence. There's too much violence. I don't understand the idea of violence. Violence is horrific, and I think that's one of the things that bugs me, is that a lot of shows and a lot of programs that come on, especially like with like Star Trek, which I'm a huge Star Trek fan. The first season of one of the newer shows was like it was too violent for me and too gory, and I'm like, why do we need to have so much gore? Why do we need to have so much violence? I get some people get their kicks from that. I personally don't. I don't like seeing that kind of like suffering. I don't even like to see the idea of suffering because it's very painful to have to go through. I get it in some instances. It makes a point. It gets a point across about the situation. But the glorification of violence and gore, I don't understand that. And if anything, I don't think it's doing us any favors because people, they become used to it, and then they rationalize when they act in a way that is violent or aggressive, and they rationalize it as if it's like a norm or it's okay or it's perfectly, it's fine to be that way. No, it's not. It's not okay. We're above that. We're better than that. But we tend to give violence and we tend to give aggression a lot more airtime than we give just basic sexuality. So I don't understand that. But that's just the way that our society, you have people who are, I want to hold the values of the family together, and I want to focus on being, servant of God, and I want to, and they have this very conservative mindset, but there's also like, okay, but I'm going to grab a gun and shoot people, or I'm going to grab a gun and I'm going to walk around and be threatening to everybody. Like, I don't understand that idea. It doesn't make sense to me. It's like the opposite. Like, okay, if you want to be a compassionate person, where's your compassion? Where's your exemplification of compassion? Where are you practicing being a compassionate human being? Let me see that. I don't want to see you making a statement that you're a compassionate person, but not exemplifying that. Like, exemplify it. Show an example of that and show it on a regular enough basis. Because if not, then you're just full of words. You're just speaking out of your ass. You're not really what you say you are. You are the opposite of what you say you are, because you're using what you say you are as a shield and as a way to identify yourself or a way to boost yourself up, but you're not really exemplifying it. You're not really being that thing. Why? What's the problem there? And that's an issue. It's like this duplicitous way of being where people say one thing or call themselves one thing, but then they operate in the opposite way. So I think it's important that we call ourselves out. We hold ourselves to higher standards. We hold ourselves to values that we can all appreciate. And I think we all appreciate having a peaceful world. I think we can all appreciate having a life that does not have to deal with a lot of violence or anger or hatred. I mean, I think we can deal with that. I think we all prefer that over a freaking like Mad Max scenario where everyone's trying to blow each other up and they're trying to take advantage of each other. Like, we're better than that. We're better than that. Why are we even allowing ourselves to even think that way? We can do better than that, right? So let me go through here because I want to see what you guys are, what you guys have asked about here. Hey, Valentina. Hey, Red Robin. Hey, Venus. All right, let's see. I'm here. Cassidy, I'm here. I was doing my weekly donation and your notification came up and I was like, what? Yeah, I had to change our study group time. I would have given y'all notice and given y'all like a week to be aware of that. Did not expect to do it last minute, but it was way too hot and I still want to walk today. So I was like, okay, I guess today's the day. Today's the day. Some more karmic lessons. I won't call it karmic lessons. They're just, you can call them karmic experiences. Karmic debt or karmic lessons can be a way to word it, but it doesn't really cover like the full extent of what those interactions or engagements are about. Well, there isn't any debt, and that's what Red Robin's like. If there was a debt, couldn't there be an abundance too? There isn't really a debt. It's more of a experience. It's almost like it's almost as if, let's say you go and you think of it this way. You know, some of these shows like Undercover Boss, where like you take the people who are the most prosperous or the ones at the top of the organization, and they put themselves in these roles where they experience things from a completely different perspective within the organization or company. Well, that's a choice that person made to follow through or to participate in that. Our souls are doing that all the time, but with the lifetimes, with the different lifetimes that we have, our soul is choosing to have an experience and then desires to have the opposite. It wants to understand. It wants to know. This is how God exists, because God is all things. In order for God to be all things and to know all things, God has to experience all things. If we are the witnessing, experiencing part of God, this is how God exists. This is how God is part of that process. It's not like God is experiencing everything and knowing everything separately. We are that thing that is being experienced through. Yeah, Red Robin. It's like talking to the dead, talking to the, yeah, absolutely. It's like a. This is why for a long time I didn't like sharing what I did for a living with people. So like I would go to events or parties or such, and people would ask me, "So what do you do for a living?" I would always just say consulting. Now I do it now, but for completely different reasons. But back then, before I owned what I did for a living, I didn't want to open up that conversation because I didn't know how the person was going to deal with it. And so if I would tell people, you know, oh yeah, this is what I do for a living, some people would immediately get away from me because they thought I was like the devil incarnate. Some people would become intrigued and they wanted to have a conversation about that, which is fine. I don't mind that. Some people wanted a reading for free, or they wanted to get, you know, a reading, which is fine. But if I'm off the clock, or if I'm not, that's my designated time where I'm not reading, you know, for me to just have to force myself to accommodate people. This is like what happened earlier with this lady. People have this idea that just because I'm available, you have a right to get something from me. And I make myself available at specific times of the week to do it for free. This is my boundary. So I get private messages, text messages, I get emails all the time from people who do not want to go into the live or don't want to just book a session with me, but they want to do it all the time. I can't operate that way. I will go crazy and I will lose my mind if I was always on and always doing this. So I have to set boundaries for people. Some people don't understand that I have boundaries. Some people don't understand that, sorry, but this is it, you know. And people want, if they don't get a chance to read me, or if I don't help them, they feel the need to take it out on me, or they feel the need that to want to come at me for it, which, I mean, okay, whatever. Like if there's a restaurant and they're giving out 50 chicken sandwiches for free, and the last sandwich just went, you're not going to go up to the person who was serving the sandwiches and completely go off on them, or, you know, try to act aggressively or violent towards them, because that's means something's wrong with you. If you are going to react that way, you're the problem. The lack of those sandwiches is not the problem. You show yourself in full colors when you behave that way. And so this is why you have to hold people accountable. And something that I do that people don't understand sometimes is whenever I set boundaries, those boundaries serve their purpose, because if a person has a problem with the boundary that I've put up and they try to break through the boundary, immediately my red flags come up and I acknowledge that this person is not someone that I want to deal with. Because at that point, that shows me that they have a lack of respect for my boundaries, that they feel so entitled that I should serve them as if I'm, you know, I'm their servant, because they feel entitled to that, or they feel that they're owed, and I'm the only person in the world that can make that up to them. And I'm like, no, I don't owe you anything. I offer what I offer. Take it or leave it. If you're not in time, if you're not there in time, you don't get it. You don't get it. That's the end of the story. If I run out of chicken sandwiches, don't come for me, because you're gonna get it. So people have to understand that. And so sometimes putting boundaries up for people is very important. I actually would implore and suggest that you all do these things. Y'all put boundaries up, because with people who are not going to be healthy for you, if they don't respect your boundaries and they don't accept what you have to offer, and they feel that you owe them more than what you've offered, at that point, that's not a healthy person that you want to keep in your life, because they're only going to take and take and take regardless of what they're going through. Everybody's going, and I'm not saying everybody who operates that way is evil or bad or wrong. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is those people do not understand what they are doing and how they are definitely disrespecting or dishonoring you as a being. And so they will continue to push and push and push because they just feel like it's their place. It isn't, and I won't allow it. And so you have to put those boundaries up, and that will show you who you allow into your circle and who you don't. There's a reason why sometimes I make certain comments or I say certain things, because I know by me saying that it's going to trigger people. Some people will be triggered in a way where they will be like, oh my God, I don't like him, this, that, whatever. They'll come up with whatever excuse not to like me. That's fine. They don't have to like me. But what happens is they leave. They go away. Because if something like that is going to trigger them, then they don't see who I really am. They're not seeing who I am. They're not seeing what my work is about. They're not seeing what I'm here to do. They only see their own issue based on that trigger, based on that topic, based on whatever. So for example, if I'm having a conversation about sex and I'm having a spiritual conversation that involves sex, there are people who are going to tune in who immediately, thinking that I'm a psychic and I'm a medium, oh, he's supposed to be like this priestly person, or he's supposed to be this like super highly spiritual, never pisses anybody off, is so likable, everybody will love this person. Like, there's these expectations and these ideas about that. And so the minute that I say a specific thing that is a trigger, or I bring up something that can be an easy trigger, they will react to that and they will go away. And that's fine. That's the reason why I do it, because I'm never going to do anything that is going to be I'm never going to do anything to hurt people intentionally. Like, I'm not out to hurt people or to cause people to suffer. I will call people out because they need to be called out, but I don't go out in the world trying to make people suffer. If anything, the opposite. And it pisses me off when people claim to do the opposite and don't, and just add more suffering to this world. Secondly, I need to know who's going to be able to handle the way that I teach and the way that I guide, because I don't have the energy to coddle every single person because they don't want to be dealing with this, or they don't want to be dealing with that, or whatever. I don't have time to coddle people. I only have time to teach people, to educate others in what I understand, give them my perspective, and then to offer them what I have to offer in the way I am offering it. That's it. And if they can't get past some of those triggers, then I don't need the person in my circle. And so it will push these people who I am not a good fit for out of my circle. And they won't stick with me. They won't stick around. So you'll have people who follow me, and they'll follow me for several weeks, or they'll follow and watch my lives or whatever. I haven't read for them, and they will blow up, and they will completely try to come after me for it. And I immediately recognize, like, there we go, there's another one, because those are actual tests that I put into place so that people are going to show their true colors if they have to deal with triggers. And people show their true colors. It doesn't take a lot for people to show their true self and their true colors. So that's why I do that. But if people can't, deal with the trigger, that's understandable. I get triggered too. I get triggered too. But for me, it's like I try to understand. Sometimes if I get triggered, why am I getting triggered? Why is that triggering me? And so sometimes I trigger because it taps into something from my past, and I need to understand, okay, is this something that I need to hold on to? Is this something that I need to maintain within myself? Because it's taking up space, it's taking up energy. Do I need to really carry this, or this thing that's triggering me in my energy? No, I really don't. Then why even give it attention? Why even try it? And so I learn a lot from just understanding myself and how I interact with these different triggers from others as well. So it's an interesting opportunity for us to learn about ourselves. And this is what we're here to do. We're here to live a human life, to have a human experience, and to know ourselves through the interaction with each other. Relationships are meant to do that. That's what relationships are about. We learn about ourselves through each other and our engagement with each other. And this Cassie's like, sex is a hot topic. Sex is just sex. I don't understand the big deal about sex. Red Robin's like, I think many celebrities are aliens. It's my little joke, but do you think there are? I definitely believe that we have visitors here. I actually posted something a few weeks ago about what I believe about the whole UFO alien thing. Yes, I absolutely believe that we have been visited. I absolutely believe that we have ET people. I call them ET because we can call them aliens. I don't even like the word alien, but like ET people, they visit us. I believe that that's happened, and they've interacted with humanity in various times in history. So yeah, I definitely believe that. And I also believe that there are people who are hybrids, or who have been engineered in a way where they are actually like a combination of a human, the human being, and also like a hybrid with some of these. Because what better way to if you are living on a planet, you're trying to like mind your own business, but you're also living on a planet where there's an inferior group of beings, humans, that are very erratic and aggressive and can be a danger, and then they suddenly develop nuclear capabilities. If you have your base, or if you have your place on this planet, and you're like, okay, these people are going to blow themselves up and we're going to go with them, so we need to kind of put the brakes on something. There's two ways you can do that. You can either make your presence known and let us know that you have the capability of disarming us, which has already happened. There's plenty of documented cases of that happening, not just in the US, but in other countries as well. Or do you infiltrate the do you infiltrate humanity by planting what you call spies, which we already do this with ourselves in other countries. People get trained to come across as if they are naturally from a different country, but they're not. They're a spy. So I would say that they probably have the best way to move humanity forward, to make us less aggressive, to make us more of a cooperative and a much more like caring group for ourselves, is probably to take a few of us, genetically engineer us, and then throw us back into the population, and then let that continue to evolve. Because those of us who start to express or start to show abilities or capabilities that are not standard for most of humanity, they have a lot more impact on the world. They have a lot more impact on the communities that they're within. So I would not be surprised if that's the way that they're dealing with it, is that they've got spies, which, I mean, that doesn't mean that they're evil or they're bad, but I would say they're spies mixed in. And some of those spies or people may not even realize that they are, because they may have memories or information that gets turned on at a certain point in their life. It can be. Cole and Luke 8:14. I used to believe that sex is also an intermingling of emotional and spiritual energies. Is that not the case? No, it definitely can be that. It just depends on how you approach this. Some people, when they are having that physical act, they're very limited in the range of expression and interaction and engagement that they share with the person they're being intimate with. So it just depends on the person and the experience that they're having, because some people close themselves up and it's just a physical act. For some people, it's a very emotional and energetic experience. So it just depends on the person, I believe. Yeah, Cassie's like, I agree. I feel like every show has murder. That's why I watch I Love Lucy and shows. Yeah, I love watching the old shows, even though now when like my partner and I, when we watch I Love Lucy, like we're like, oh my God, that is so racist. Because you realize things that you didn't realize in the past just because it was a different time. But if you understand it is a different time, you have to place those shows within their time and context. Doesn't mean that what is being expressed is acceptable or okay, but understand that in different times things were very different. Back in the day, in the Wild West, if I had a problem with you, I could just shoot you up because I have a problem with you. That was acceptable. That was okay. In Europe or in France, they used to have duels. That was acceptable. That was okay. So it depends on the time frame. When you look back on some of these things, you can see it as very barbaric, or very like ignorant or closed-minded, because these are different times. The norms and the cultural like traditions were different back then. So if you look at everything within a context of the timing, then you can understand it in a different way. That doesn't mean you should accept it always, but you can understand it in a different way. Yeah, boundaries have to be priority. Yeah, Cassidy, like I like brutal honesty. Having my stuff called out as well. Yeah, my partner calls me out. He has no problem calling me out at all, and I'm okay. I appreciate it because it forces me to have to think in a different way, or to assess myself and reassess myself. And if I know that I'm probably need to change it or deal with something in a different way, then I'll own that and I'll acknowledge that, which I've done publicly plenty of times when I feel that way. I'm a Taurus though, so we're stubborn as all hell. So we will stick to whatever until we finally realize, okay, what? Do aliens have souls too? All life has a soul. All life is connected to a soul. And some souls are interconnected between different living beings. And so, for example, my soul is the same soul as my mama cat. My mama cat and I have the same soul. She is a figment or a aspect of my soul in a physical form that has come about. And so we have the same soul, but I'm more in sync with the soul. She has less of that kind of comprehension or understanding. She's more operating from what's normal for her, what's natural for her, but we have the same soul. So some people can have, when I think of soulmates, people always misinterpret the idea of soulmates, and soulmates can be just a loved one that you have an extreme connection to. It doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic connection. And most people's soulmates in this lifetime are familial or are connections of that nature, not romantic. Romantic soulmate connections are not as common as people want to make them out to be. I would challenge you to a duel next time. Let's go over here, because Thank you, Kaylin. Appreciate it. Going through trying to read through the bullshit. Let's see. Yeah, Christina Jeans, she says, I get triggered on things I do, but judge others on. It opens my eyes to myself and where I need help. Yeah, I understand that. I totally get that. Yeah, for me, it's, I don't care for, people who don't do what they say. Like that's a thing that bothers me a lot. And if I find myself doing that, I try to call myself out in it. And we gotta hold ourselves accountable, right? We gotta hold, like, you can't walk around saying that you're a compassionate person, but then where's the proof, right? This is what I was just saying before. So yeah, I get it. And it's something, sometimes we judge others on something because we don't do it ourselves, and because we're angry that we don't do it ourselves. So we take out our anger on other people who don't fall in line or who don't do that thing, right? So that's another reason why. So all right guys, I'm done. So I love you all. I will be back next week on Wednesday. Hope you'll have a good week.